one of the strongest basic principles in dealing with transparent watercolor is to work from light to dark, knowing that each successive layer will show through the last one. So one of the first things I do is lay a base for just about everything I'm going to be doing. In this case, there's going to be paint on these boards in the wall. There'll be color, but I want, at any time that I don't cover with a color, or if I scratch out or wash out any, I want the wood color to show through. So that's what this basically is, the color of the wood, just as this is a little wood chest. So I do the basic wood color, and then I put, just as it would happen in reality, I put a color over it. And another thing that I keep handy is a test sheet, so that I can, as I mix my colors to work with, I can test to see if that's the color I'm after. And in this case, I'm going back to some reference material that I have. And I compare, not too warm, needs to be greener. So now, let's see what we got. And a little too gray. That's about what I'm after. So now I'll take this stronger, darker color. Oh, need more green. Little raw umber has some green in it. And still a little greener. That's my full strength. Now I move some of that over, add water to it, and I have my lighter wash, which is matching up to my reference material. Okay? Now, I know that if I lay that down in a dark fashion, and then with a damp sponge, lift it out, I'm very close to what I'm after.
Right about there?
Mm-hmm. Still needs a little bit of a little more of the greenish cast to it. And I go back and change the strongest color first. Knowing that when I move that over, mix water with it, I should get an area that's just about right. Looks close. Okay. And then if I wipe out, I'm real close. So you'll see that area in there is just about right.
Yeah, wow.
Okay. So now I'm ready to work on the painting with those pigments. One thing that I do in order to give myself an additional painting time is I go into my painting And the area that I'm going to work on, I just dampen it, which gives me a little extra time. Now I want to work with this area here.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is just I put just enough pigment. I come over here and I put water. And I'll add just enough pigment to it so that I know where I'm at. Like that. Now, I just want to dampen this area. I put water wherever I'm going to be painting.
Just a little bit of moisture.
Right. And the fibers in the paper will hold on to that moisture. And that gives me a little extra painting time. So it's really just a matter of planning ahead. And I need my rag here. I keep a lap rag here so I can adjust the moisture in my brush. I want to take that off. Right there. Now, I know from my test here that if I lay this in full strength and then pick it out with a damp sponge, that's going to be the color range that I'm after in my reference material. Okay?
All right.
So now I'm going to lay this in. The paper's damp. It'll immediately take on whatever I put down. And it'll stop. Wherever it hits a dry paper.
Essentially, that extra moisture creates a barrier.
Right.
So it won't bleed into other parts of the painting.
Right. Now, another way to lift off that lighter area that's in the reference material is just use a slightly damp brush. And I might choose to do that today simply because that automatically gives me a softer edge. And if I want to take off more than that, again, not a wet. I don't want to introduce any water. I want to lift off. So I'm just going to lift off in this area here. Down to the white of the papers. And you notice that leaves a soft edge as well, which is one of the nice things about using a sponge. Now, my reference material indicates this old hammered helmet has been beat up quite a bit. So it's got some spots in it that are lighter than the others. Well, now's the time for me to do that. I just go in, pick a lighter area here and there. So it looks a little bit irregular. Now I know I can come back later and adjust smaller areas if I miss them now. But already that's beginning to look metallic. Now watch my edges. And this is still damp enough. You'll notice the pigment softens wherever I touch it with the brush. So what I'm really doing is I'm more or less painting the color of wood as an underpainting for these panels. And that will give me a surface then that I can put watercolor over. And whenever I lift off any of the watercolor, the remaining color then will be the wood. So that's how I achieve these scratches. And I use this very thin, just as a more or less like I said, like a film.
Right, just a glaze.
Mm-hmm. This stage, the underpainting, I don't have to be all that careful with it. Just get enough of a film down so that when I want to remove the watercolor that's on top of it, it'll come off easily. Just a little more of a wood color. A little too yellow right there.
So you're adding a little bit of ochre, is that?
A little bit of raw sienna.
Or sienna?
And this is yellow ochre. The base is yellow ochre.
Oh, it is, okay.
There's enough more red in raw sienna to give me a little closer to a wood color. And I always test that. I think that's going to be about right. So
good.
I will add enough water to it to make it last a while. You saw the helmet at an earlier stage when I was doing the underpainting for that. Some of that underpainting serves as the finish.
Right.
Yeah. Now I'll start some of the underpainting for the wood. And again, I just do it just as it would be constructed, and that is one panel at a time. And basically all this is a simple watercolor wash. Done with acrylics instead of watercolor. And I'm adjusting the pigment a little bit. But by doing just a single panel at a time, if the edges overlap, it doesn't matter because that would happen in reality anyway. I'm just going to go on to the next panel because I want generally the same wood color. Throughout the painting. Now, anytime I put a color down on this, as I did here, if I lay a watercolor over this, anytime I lift any of the watercolor off, this wood color will be there. And since it's acrylic, once it dries, it's not going to move. It's impervious to water. So that's ideal. So I don't have to worry about lift. It's not going to lift off. In other words, that color will be there regardless. Start with this one. as long as I maintain that bead of moisture. It's not going to dry. Gives me time to finish over here. All I'm doing is imparting the color of unpainted wood. It's just an underpainting for what I plan to do in the way of a textured painted wall. Scratching the paper, but I'm not going to worry about that. That'll just become part of the surface of the painting later. Now here it gets a little more critical. Even though the sextant is going to be brass, I want to keep the acrylic away from that. So I'm only painting where it's wood in the background. I don't have to be terribly careful, because since this is brass, if I get a little yellow ochre into that, it's not going to hurt. So I can do it fairly fast. These are all relatively easy workable sections. And this section is bordered by the fact that it's cut off. It's another panel here. So all I have to worry about is going around the sextant. Come up to that line and this line. Bring it down to that line. So it's manageable. Each section is manageable. Bring this over, bring it down to the edge. If I get a little buildup, I'm not too concerned with it, because it's just a light film of acrylic. I'll go ahead and do this piece now. Nice thing about this, if there's any variation between the panels, it's all right, because even in natural wood that would happen. From section there. By painting to the defined edge of each of these panels, it allows me to work on an area small enough that it's quite controllable. Even though this area is around a complex shape, the fact is, it's still pretty easy to do. Using acrylic as an underpainting like this allows me to paint with it virtually as if it were just a watercolor wash. Now, I know that in reality, this piece of wood and this piece of wood are separate. So even though I don't have it defined, I can go ahead and come down that edge. It's going to be okay. If I get a little overlap when I do this piece, it isn't going to matter, because there could be a difference in the relatively tone of those two boards anyway. All of this shadow was done first, and I'm going to do that on this one as well. I just take a sepia tone, a soft wet edge, and then just solid to here. Then I came back with a graded wash here, and then I did this shadow. Did all of that first. Then I did my wood color and my paint color and all that on top. So the shadow always affected anything I painted on here. It never went away.
That's a smart way of doing it.
Well, it's easy. I didn't have to do a shadow on that board. The shadow was already across all of the boards.
Right.
And it allowed me to get a little better. If I tried to do a shadow on this board and match up on this board, it would be a lot harder than laying the shadow in at one time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
And that allowed me to get a nice soft edge all the way through. Whereas it's painting these boards separate shadow. This might have been a harder edge than this, and you don't want that.
Very true.
Now I'm saving this area is going to be outside of this building. So that'll be a separate painting. I'm not even going to worry about it right now. I'm just painting around it. Ultimately, I'll put kind of a little bit of a dusty glass. So everything will have a little feeling of glass.
There again, the glass first, just like you did the shadow first. And then everything else
will be painted on top of it. Yeah.
Okay,
It'll
all right.
always show through.
No acrylic there?
This is a good example right here. See, there's a shadow under this board.
Right.
It's sticking out just enough that there's a shadow all the way across. Now, no matter what I paint, that shadow is there. It keeps coming through.
And was that done with acrylic, or is that watercolor?
That was done with watercolor early on.
Okay.
But I'm just doing the wood tone on there now. This wood tone was done separate because I wanted it different than what was behind it.
Great.
And then the dovetail, it allowed me to go ahead and work on that. The structure of the box. Now this is going to be brass, the sextant. So this latch will be brass too. So I'll just do the latch at the same time I do the sextant.
Okay.
So there's no point to mix two different palettes. The palette for this will do for this.
Great.
So that's no problem. And yeah. And that's all just a matter of planning ahead. Now you notice the difference in the color here?
Oh, absolutely. One's a little bit more yellow than the other.
Yeah, but it's not going to make a bit of difference when I get paint over that.
Right.
All it's going to show through is a little bit of the yellow.
Right. Okay. Won't be enough area for us to differentiate.
Right. This underpainting tone will affect the color of the watercolor. So if I use a green, the red that's in here is the complement of green. So that's going to gray it down a little. It'll be a little less than a brilliant green. It'll be more of a kind of an olive green, or a khaki green.
Okay.
And that's part of my planning and the color for this piece. Next thing I'll do is I'll do the sextant. So I'll mix all of my yellows at that time.
Oh, okay.
Now, see, you saw this early on, didn't you?
We did. Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, it's since then you've added texture to it.
Yeah.
A little variation in saturation.
Well, somewhere where some of the nickel, I'm assuming it's a nickel coating on that helmet, and it's made of copper. So the copper comes through where it's been rubbed.
Right.
Rubbed off. Yeah. Or nicked or scratched.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, the detail on all of this will come around when I will be working in some opaque whites. And I'll mix some of the base color here with white, and I'll get my highlights. And those highlights will define the structure.
Okay.
And I'll even get into a little bit of this where there's copper in all of this metal. And you'll notice it's oxidized green.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a nice little touch in there.
Right. Right. Little nuances like that really really make a difference.
Yeah, so it won't just be highlights. I'll be painting some of the the way it's oxidized. Now here it was big enough that I just went around it and I left it there.
Right. So you've already got a little bit of white developed
like
there
that, right.
without having to lay down any opaque.
Right, exactly.
Very good.
So where it's large enough that I can go around it, it's worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
Some place like the highlights on these bars, it simply would be prohibitive.
Right.
To go around it. Too time consuming.
Right.